Yeah, Apurva can go ahead now.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our Industry Expert Connect series. On behalf of the XPGDM batch, I'm delighted to welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Rajiv Nayak, to share his insights about positive intelligence. Mr. Rajiv is the CEO of Exponentium Coaching and Consulting and has over 20 plus years of pharma leadership experience in India, Asia, and Eastern Europe. He is the ex-country head at Ukraine for Dr. Reddy's Labs and has held leadership positions in large pharmas, including Dr. Reddy's, Ranbaxy, Cipla, and MSD. Mr. Rajiv has extensive experience in building coaching cultures in organization and coaching leaders in extensive position to create high performance teams. We're glad to have you here with us, sir.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Apurva.
You can start now, sir, and share your screen.
Cool. So before we actually start, I wanted to share a few comments. One is I would request everyone who can and where it is possible to be on your videos. It's always better to see faces and to interact live with people. That actually otherwise takes away the positivity of the energy which we can actually transfer. The second is that at any given point in time, if you have a question or you want to ask something, there is, I think, raise hand kind of feature in Zoom, which you can use, and we can stop the presentation at that time and I could take a question. Okay. It would be better in the interest of time, because the topic is quite interesting and very, very big. It would be from the interest of time perspective, better if you keep your questions for the end. But if there is something which is really, very important for you to resolve at that point, you may raise your hand and we can take up the question at that point. Okay. Now, before we go ahead, I want to actually run a poll. And maybe Sarvesh, is that poll available?
Yeah, it is available. Can I share now?
Yeah, so you can bring up the first question, and this will be interesting actually to get your views on this. We are actually living, everyone, I'm sure all of you who have worked in the industry and basically in life in general, you must be seeing that the situation in the world is changing very fast. So we call this world, today's world, as a VUCA world, right? A volatile, uncertain, changing, and ambiguous. So I want to know, what is your view on this? Do you think that the world today is changing at a pace which is unprecedented, which you've never seen before? So I'm talking about today, post-COVID and with all the digitalization which is coming in and so on and so forth. What is your view on that? Can we have the results?
Yeah, we'll have the result.
Yeah, so most of you expectedly have said that you either agree or you completely agree with this statement. So it's more than 85% of you who say that the world is indeed changing at an unprecedented pace. Now, the second question which I would like to ask is, how many of you think that your capacity to deal with this change is also growing at a proportional pace? And do you sometimes feel anxious or somewhat worried that you may not be actually changing, your capacity to deal with that change may not be changing at the same pace? Can you bring in the second question, Sarvesh? So do you feel that your capacity to deal with the change is not growing at the same rate? And you feel sometimes anxious, unsettled about this? or you just find yourself thinking a lot about this, even thinking a lot, overthinking about it is also a sign of some level of anxiety. Can we have the results, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of you actually have said that your 80%, more than 80% of you have said that your capacity to deal with that change is not growing at the same rate. And by the way, this is not uncommon. Every single place in the world, every single poll, whether it is in the industry or in academics, wherever this question is asked, when I'm talking about academics, I'm talking about even schools, colleges, universities, where this question is asked, people have polled largely in the same way. Majority of the people, they think that their capacity to change is not growing in proportion to the way the world is changing. So that brings us to another question. We undergo a lot of training programs, right? A lot of training programs. Information is available everywhere, right? Information is available on Google. I mean, we live in what is called as an infodemic, right? Somebody used the word infodemic, like a pandemic, which is there everywhere. So we have information everywhere, and we have actually a lot of training programs, offsite programs. Those of you who have worked in the industry, they would have actually undergone a lot of these programs. When you undergo this program and you try to build a new skill, when you are actually trying to change a habit, right? We often see that after a few months or a few weeks, even, the new skill or the new habit just wears off, right? And we go back to those old habits, we go back to those old ways of actually doing business. I want to understand, how often do you see that? Can we have the results, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 62% plus 15%. So that's about close to 80% of you have also said that you very often see this happening. That when we are actually trying to change a habit, and by the way, this is not only true for work, it is also true for life, right? We tend to actually see this very commonly in life. How many of us actually make New Year's resolutions and we say that we are going to change something this year, and by the end of January that New Year resolution is forgotten? Somewhere it's gone at the back of the mind somewhere, right? How often do you see that happen? How many of us actually have a gym membership, which we actually say that, okay, we'll go to the gym very frequently, but at the end of the day, the gym membership is just lying, and we never actually end up using it. Can I request everyone to mute themselves, please?
Nupur, can you mute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Can you see my slide?
Yes, Rajiv.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, excellent. So, some of these questions which I asked friends was actually the motivation behind why I actually founded this company called as Exponentium Coaching and Consulting. This is actually a boutique consulting firm which I have founded some time back. There are two arms in this particular company. There is a consulting arm where I basically work with pharma companies from CIS, Eastern Europe and India on various aspects of business development, strategy, and so on and so forth. But the bigger work which I do is in the area of coaching and in inspiring individuals to exponentially inspired and meaningful growth. And when I say when I use these words, I think the words meaningful and inspired are for me very, very important. Why I'm saying this is because a lot of times we tend to live life because it is to be lived, right? We are actually following, we are kind of going through a life often where it's almost like sleepwalking, right? Somebody has actually said that this is good for you, so we do it. At least I did it that way. I got into B Farm because I wanted to get into life sciences. Somebody said that, this is a good stream, so I went there. Somebody said that MBA is good, so I went there. And somebody said that this kind of career is good, so I went there. I of course tried my best and I did well in whatever I did. But then at some point I actually started asking myself, am I finding meaning and purpose in what I'm doing? And that is when I actually saw this, this fork in the road, which you can kind of see in this picture. And I felt like there was probably a need to make a change. So positive intelligence, the topic which we are going to talk about, friends, is basically answering those questions about why behavioral change does not actually sustain after a while, and why do only 20% of teams individuals achieve their true potential. Positive intelligence, by the way, is not my theme. I have not invented this particular topic. There is a lot of research behind this topic. There is a program which is run by Stanford academician. His name is Mr. Shirzad Shamin. You can also read a book written by him. The book is with the same name. It's called as Positive Intelligence. And a lot of research done by Stanford actually proves some of the things which Shirzad is talking about. So this research actually has been tested in a lot of people. Hundreds of CEOs were included, Stanford students were included, elite athletes were included, 400,000 participants actually participated from 50 countries. We'll talk a little bit about what positive intelligence is. But before we go there, I wanted to actually talk about this ancient myth. I don't know how many of you have actually heard of this. The myth of the Greek god. Has anyone of you heard of it? So anyway, even if you've not heard, basically the myth goes as follows. This particular king, Sisyphus, the mythical king from the Greek dynasty, he was given a curse. He actually cheated death twice, and then god Zeus actually gave him this curse that he had to actually push this boulder, a very heavy boulder, up a steep hill till it reaches the top. But the catch was that every time it used to reach the top, it used to actually fall down again. So just before it reached the top, all his efforts used to get unraveled, and it used to fall down again. And he had to do it again and again and again. And it turned out that he did it his entire life. So he was kind of cursed to do this his entire life. Now, come to think of it, if you think of your habits and things that we want to change, both in work as well as in life, it is not much different from the what Sisyphus had to face, right? Because there are so many things which we want to change. We know that we need to change them, but it is so difficult to change them. What is wrong? Yeah. So we spoke about some of the things, right? Like, why do expensive team building programs, they only lead to some temporary change? Why do dieters, right? So many of us get on a diet, and then after some time we forget about that diet, right? The moment the first temptation comes, the diet is forgotten. But more importantly, these are actually things which impact us lesser in life. But if you're an athlete, for example, and you're choking in a crucial phase of the game, right? How many times have you actually seen that happen? There are a lot of times cricketers, in the last ball, they have to actually have very, very strong focus, right? If they actually lose their focus, they can actually choke and they can make a big mistake. The same with any other athlete. And when we have extreme stress, we often lead to, it often leads to sleepless nights, right? I'm sure that all of us have at some point in time had a sleepless night because of extreme stress, because our mind is actually going into overdrive, thinking about what is going to happen tomorrow, right? Now, all of these things, we know a lot of things, right? We know a lot of things need to be changed. We know that a particular thing is bad for us, for example, a particular behavior, a particular habit, a particular type of leadership behavior. For example, a lot of people who are perfectionists or micromanagers, they know that they are micromanaging. They have been given feedback, but still they continue to do the same thing again and again and again, right? Sometimes when they are given feedback, there is a small change for some time, and then they go back to the old habit again very fast. So there seems to be an eternal gap between the knowing and the doing, right? So there is that gap. And what is that gap is something which is important to understand if we have to make a change. Now, why is it that these traditional training programs are not working? The traditional training and development initiatives. There are three major reasons for that. First is that they focus more on the insight rather than muscle building. Right? So research has now shown, and positive intelligence research has shown, that a lot of our behaviors, and most of our behaviors in fact, are actually sitting in our subconscious. They are driven from our subconscious. And therefore, changing a behavior requires some kind of mental training. It's just like going to a gym, right? It's if you have to run a marathon and you have never run in your life, do you think you are going to be able to run a 21-kilometer marathon tomorrow? You are not going to be able to do that, because your body requires a certain amount of training to be able to do something which you have never done in your life. It is exactly the same with with our brain. And when we want to do something new, then we need to train the brain on how to do that. The second reason why traditional training initiatives don't work is because they treat the symptoms rather than the cause. Right? So often, for example, when a person lacks empathy, people actually tend to say that, okay, you need to do practice more of active listening, for example, as a skill. But one needs to understand and address why exactly the empathy is missing. What are the beliefs of that person, the deep-seated beliefs because of which the empathy is missing? And only then sustainable change can happen. The other thing is that there is no common operating system. Right now, when I'm saying no common operating system, it means that we are listening to so many things, right? 7 habits of I'm sure that you must have read 7 habits of highly effective people, 5 secrets of managing time, 8 steps of managing conflict, 10 steps of doing something, and there are these umpteen number of leadership books and programs, etc., which are available. And it becomes very difficult for us to basically understand which of them to follow, right? So there needs to be some kind of a standard framework to be able to follow, which kind of encapsulates all these learnings and is easy for us to understand and follow. So PQ basically tries to address all this. PQ is nothing but positive intelligence, just like emotional intelligence is EQ, and IQ stands for the intellect. So positive intelligence is basically the short form of that is PQ, or positive intelligence quotient. The research has shown that when people actually focus on PQ, sales results have actually improved by 37%. Project teams performed more than 31% on their KPIs. Even students performed significantly better on their math tests and so on and so forth. So also in terms of wellness in our life, PQ has shown to have significant improvement on all health parameters. So people tend to fall sick less often. They report less burnout. A lot of people actually, after a very stressful job, after many years, I've seen a lot of people actually ending up with burnout, and they say that, okay, I can't actually take it anymore. I've seen that happening umpteen number of times in the 25 years of my career. And this is what actually PQ also tries to address. Research has shown that high PQ actually leads to a 10-year increase in lifespan. Who of us actually don't want to have a longer life? Right? So the health-related research on PQ has shown that it can actually lead to an increase in lifespan. So from all this perspective, PQ therefore is becoming increasingly critical advanced human skill, right, to thrive in this very volatile world. And I'll talk a little bit later about relating this volatility and that change which we spoke about in the poll initially, how actually that relates to PQ. But before we get there, I think it is important to understand a little bit about the neuroscience behind positive intelligence. And for those of you who are not, don't have a science background, don't worry about it. I'll try to make it as easy as possible for you to understand. It is, the idea here is not to make you neurologists or neurosurgeons. The idea is to just, kind of understand the concept so that you understand the why behind the what, which I'm going to actually talk about in later slides. Now, our mind, basically, our brain is made up of more than 1 trillion neurons. Right? So there are actually more than 1 trillion neurons in our brain. And all our positive and negative emotions, what we actually experience, the positive emotions as well as negative emotions, these are basically new nerve connections getting formed. So one positive emotion is basically a nerve connection, and it is passing on of this particular chemical impulse, which you can see from one neuron to another. Okay. So the type of stimulus will lead to whether which kind of chemical signal has to be passed. Okay. So if the brain decides that it is a negative situation and a negative emotion has to be actually created, they will release a certain type of chemical neurotransmitter, which is cortisol in this case, which creates the anxiety, fear, and all those stress and all those negative emotions. If it is a positive emotion, it is often serotonin and endorphins, which actually lead to happiness, gratitude, wisdom, empathy, and these kind of positive emotions. So it is very important to understand that these emotions are nothing but neural pathways and neurotransmitters in action. And it is also important to understand a little bit about how our brain has evolved. So our brain has evolved from something which is very, very basic. The amygdala, this small pink part of the brain, which you can see here, this is what is called as our survival brain, or the in layman's terms, it is called as crocodile brain sometimes. Because in the earliest forms of evolution, this was the brain this was the part of the brain which was only available for us. I mean, humans did not have such the kind of complex brain that exists today. Humans actually millions of years ago, they had only this part of the brain. Now, this part of the brain was actually wired for survival, to ensure that we survive, right? So there is a very extreme negative bias which this part of the brain has. It always looks for danger. It always looks for when there is a threat to our life, to our survival. Okay. And what happens when there is a threat? When there is a threat to our life, we basically have what is called as a survival mechanism, jumping into action, which is the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. Maybe you guys have heard of this somewhere. Fight is basically we tend to get ready for fighting. So we get aggressive, we get angry, we get basically ready to get into a fight or into a confrontation. Flight is we get ready to run away from there. We kind of avoid that situation, or we try to hide somewhere and not get in touch with that person at all with whom the fight may happen. And freeze is the reaction where we are basically, we don't know what to do at all, right? So we are basically stuck in a particular place. We kind of stick our head into a mound of sand and wait for the problem to actually pass, right? So that is the freeze reaction. So in the earliest form of our brain, in the earliest form of humans, this particular self-preservation mechanism or survival mechanism was very, very important, right? You can imagine that in those days, when human beings used to live in caves, this was very important, because otherwise a wild animal or another tribe could come and actually kill you, right? So therefore, the focus on danger or on any kind of threats was very, very important. This is not so important as on today, right? But our brain continues to have the same survival mechanism. Only the threats have changed. So if then the threat was a tiger coming and staring into your eyes, or another human being of another tribe with a weapon coming and waiting to kill you, the threat of today is uncertainty, loss of job, loss of self-worth, low self-esteem. These are all threats which our minds actually process in the same way as a threat like a tiger in those days. Does it make sense? Is it making sense what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
This part of the brain, which is the basal ganglia, is also what is called as a reward and acquisition part of the brain. It is closely connected to the amygdala, which is the survival brain. Here, basically, the brain says that to avoid threat, you need to actually run after some reward, or you need to kind of accumulate a lot of wealth, or you need to do something which will give you power to survive from those threats, right? It is more or less the same. Now, all of our negative reactions, all of our negative emotions are actually coming from this survival brain. The survival brain, to make it easy to understand, we will call this as a survival brain. Okay. The survival brain is basically the amygdala and the basal ganglia. But for us to actually understand this very simply, I will call this as a survival brain. So this is basically the part of the brain which releases the stress hormones like cortisol. And this is from where all our anxiety, negative emotions, unhappiness, from our experience in life, in work, etc., it all comes from here. And it creates a certain kind of thought patterns. This part of the brain, depending on the type of stimulus. Remember that I told you that depending on the type of stimulus, there are different chemical neurotransmitters which are released. There are different types of thought patterns. Okay, and we will talk about those different thought patterns in the subsequent slides. These thought patterns, let us, for the sake of simplicity, call them as saboteurs. These thought patterns are sabotaging us, sabotaging our happiness. And that is why we can call them as saboteurs. The prefrontal cortex, this is the highest part of the brain. This is the part of the brain which evolved, right, over time. So the earliest human beings did not have this part of the brain. Today, we all have this part of the brain, which is called as the prefrontal cortex. And this is the sage of executive functioning. This is the part of the brain which actually has very, the higher level emotions like wisdom, empathy, compassion, innovation, creativity, and so on and so forth. So we can call this as the sage, right? Just for the sake of simplicity. So this is the sage part of the brain, or the PQ brain. Okay, so this is just to give you a little bit of understanding of from where these saboteurs and the sage is coming. We are going to talk about what is a saboteur and what is a sage going forward. Yeah. Now, whenever there is a situation, any situation which comes in our life, it could be in our personal life or in our work life. Whenever there is any situation, we have actually the possibility of having one of these two types of reactions, either a positive reaction or a negative reaction. Right now, if we go by the saboteur mechanism or the survival mechanism, most of the emotions which we will actually gain out of it are negative. So we will have anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, sadness, grief. These are all actually negative emotions which come out of the saboteur perspective. The sage, on the other hand, leads to positive emotions, and emotions like wisdom, empathy, compassion, curiosity. These are all coming from the sage. The problem with this is that the prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain, which is the sage part of our brain, is slower than the amygdala or the survival brain. It is much slower. And therefore, the first thing which kicks on when you have a situation, a difficult situation or a challenge which comes in your life, right? The first thing which kicks on is the amygdala. And therefore, the negative emotions actually come on very fast. So what is important, therefore, is to understand this, to understand from where these negative emotions are coming, and then training your brain to actually wait, pause, and move to the sage perspective. Unfortunately, what is happening is that when we don't know about this context and when we don't know about this situation, we tend to think that the saboteur reaction is normal. We tend to think that the saboteur reaction is normal. So we keep on actually having the same thought patterns all the time, to the extent that this actually thought pattern, it is like a highway of emotions. But this particular pathway, neural pathway, becomes so strong that automatically we start actually using these thought patterns in the future, and the sage actually never gets utilized at all. So there are a lot of people who continue to be in sage most of the time, in the saboteur mode most of the time. And this basically is what is low positive intelligence. So maybe most of you have heard of this particular quote. It's a very, very famous quote by a person called Viktor Frankl. He was a survivor in the Auschwitz camps, where the Nazis basically, had taken the Jews, and they were actually waiting for being terminated. And he said that between stimulus and response, there is a space, right? Between the stimulus, any kind of stimulus or event which happens in our life, and our response to it, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response to. So he's talking about choosing the response, and that response is nothing but, do we actually choose to have that negative emotion, or do we consciously choose to go to the sage perspective? And I'll talk about what is the sage perspective and how we can use it in the subsequent slides. And in our response to this actually lies our growth and our freedom to be happy, our freedom to be consciously happy, to be able to get rid of our negative emotions, and to grow as a human being. Actually, it all lies in this particular response, and which is why PQ is such a critical skill to develop for both work and life. So what is this PQ then? Positive intelligence basically measures these two states of mind. So the mind sabotaging us and the mind serving us, right? So when we are in those negative emotions, this is basically when the mind is sabotaging us, and when we are moving to the prefrontal cortex and when the mind is actually serving us, this is when we are having the positive emotions. This is when the mind is serving us. So positive intelligence basically measures the ratio of time in which we are on the positive side rather than on the negative side, which means that if you have a score of, it is actually measured on a scale of 0 to 100. If you have a score of 75, for example, on positive intelligence, it means that 75% of the times you are on the sage, you are using your sage part of the brain, and 25% of the time you are using the saboteur part of the brain. But if your score is 50% is 50, for example, on 100, that means that 50% of the time you are in the saboteur part of the brain, right? Now, the research has also shown that there is a tipping point, right? There is a tipping point which is essential for us to be happy and for us to be successful and for us to achieve the true potential that we have. And that tipping point is 75. That's tipping point is 75, and only 20% of people, individuals, are actually able to have consistently their positive intelligence score above 75. And which is why the first slide, if you remember, it said that why do only 20% of individuals and teams achieve their true potential? Because 80% of us have positive intelligence score less than 75. Okay. And I'll talk in the subsequent slides how we can actually, with this understanding, grow our positive intelligence and transform our lives. So what are these saboteurs? Basically, saboteurs are self-limiting thoughts and beliefs. So they are kind of mental patterns or habits. They are generally created in the first 20 years of our life. So most of the things, these subconscious patterns, they are coming from our formative years, the first 20 years of our life. By the way, you may actually feel that there is a lot of psychology and neuroscience in what I'm talking about. It comes from a lot of training which I have done, and the background which I have in life sciences and psychology and neuroscience. But I'm trying to make it as easy for you to understand as possible. If you have any questions in the end, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay. So these saboteurs are nothing but self-limiting beliefs. And I'll give you some examples of self-limiting beliefs when we go ahead, and what kind of saboteurs actually different people have. They are deeply embedded in our subconscious. So these are actually in our subconscious mind, in that amygdala region, where which is part of the survival mind. And in our childhood, these may have been useful to us, right? So to give you an example, one particular sabotaging self-limiting belief which a lot of people have, and I also had the same, was the hyperachiever belief. The hyperachiever belief is very common in the Indian middle class, where our parents actually tend to compare us with other children. See that boy, or see that neighbor's boy, or see your auntie's boy or girl, or whatever. And that comparison, the competition to survive, basically leads our parents to unknowingly feed into our brain the belief that my self-worth is actually related to what I achieve in life, to my achievements, to my title, to whatever I do in my career, and so on and so forth. Now, this hyperachiever belief, to some extent, it is good. It is good, especially in childhood, because it actually gives you the motivation and the drive to do well and to actually reach a certain level in your career, because without that, probably you may not be able to have that drive. But at some point, this starts coming in the way of you getting better, because it leads to unnecessary stress, anxiety, etc. And the ability to process failure gets severely impacted when you have this hyperachiever mindset, right? Because remember that in the hyperachiever mindset, I am good if I keep achieving. I am worthy if I keep achieving. That's the mindset. So if I'm not achieving, means that I'm not worthy. That is the interpretation which the mind is making. And therefore, failure leads to depression and thoughts related to low self-worth, which further leads to lower self-esteem and leads to a lot of other things which are actually not very healthy for us. So if you think of it, these saboteurs are actually like our life sentences, right? Life sentences like umr kaid, right? It is being in prison for the entire life, because you are basically not able to you are not free to do whatever you want, right? Your mind is actually running you and not you running your mind. So from that perspective, it is like a mental prison you are living in. And that's the meaning of the picture which I've shown here. So we are basically prisoners of these saboteurs unless we actually actively know them, identify them, label them, and do away with them. Most of our behaviors are unconsciously driven by them, and they also limit our opportunity for action. So when we run by a certain saboteur, we basically get completely taken over by these emotions. And sometimes we are kind of lose control. There is this feeling of that I don't have control over the fear, the stress, or the anger, or the shame, or the unhappiness, right? A lot of times, I'm sure that you have also felt this sense of helplessness or loss of control, right? Where you have a certain very strong negative emotion which has actually come because of certain situation in life, and it has kind of taken over, and you are not able to actually control your life, at least momentarily. So saboteur thoughts, therefore, severely limit both our success as well as happiness. As I gave, as the example I gave about the hyperachiever saboteur, what it did in my work is that it led me to overwork, right? It led me to a point where my health started suffering. It led me to a point where I also got my team to take, so I always took very, very stretched goals and targets, etc., because for me, that was very, very important for my own self-worth. What I also did is that I actually overstretched my team, which led to them not being happy and so on and so forth. So I was not fair on them as well. What it did is that it started at some point limiting my success, and it also started limiting my happiness, because at some point, whatever happens in work, it eventually cascades onto life, right? When you are actually overworking, when you don't have a work-life balance, Your family will not be happy with you. You will have troubled relationships, and eventually that will have an impact on your happiness. Right? Now, to be able to identify what is your saboteur, it is the question which you might want to ask is that to survive, what is your mind saying to you? To survive or succeed, I should dash dash dash. Right? So what is it that your mind is telling you to do to survive or succeed? Now, this is actually how the saboteur is actually getting formed. I will tell you an easier way of how to find your saboteurs, okay, later on in the presentation. So how are these saboteurs created? This is a very, very interesting slide. Most of the saboteurs are, or these thought patterns which we are talking about, they are formed, as I said, in the early part of our life, in the formative years of our life. They mislead us into thinking that they help us actually to be happy and successful. So they will be kind of lying you or misleading you, these thought patterns in the mind. In reality, what it is doing is it is creating exactly the opposite effect. Right? What it actually will also say, our mind actually tells us sometimes that you know, you will win something, you will get something in return. You are going to get a good grade in your whatever exam, or you're going to win a project or whatever that is in the short run, but you kind of lose the big picture, and you tend to not see what is that big picture and what is it that you're losing in the long term. Right? So there are 10 such saboteur thoughts and actions. The first one is called as the judge. The judge is basically a common saboteur. And this is basically, I'll explain what it does, what each of these saboteurs do, and so on and so forth. How are these saboteurs formed? Basically, these are formed by the experiences which we have in our childhood. Okay, in the first 20 years of our life, till the time we reach adulthood, most of the times these saboteurs have thought patterns are already born or created in our mind. These are actually created by two, you know, which saboteur you have, because each person will have a different set of saboteurs, will depend on two things. One is your motivation. What is your motivation? And second is your personality or style. Okay, so if you see motivation, there are three types of motivation. There is the motivation to be independent or free. There is a motivation to be accepted by others, and there is a motivation to be safe, security. And there are three types of styles, right? You either assert something, which means that you go and get it, or you earn something, you try to earn it, or you avoid something completely. Okay, now in the intersection of these, there are these different types of saboteurs. Okay, I will go into each of them in a little bit of detail. So what is the judge saboteur? The judge saboteur basically is judging in three ways. It is judging yourself, it is judging others, and it is judging the situation. Right? So a lot of times, you know, the judge will say that, okay, you are not good enough, I'm not good enough, or I am not good enough to do something, for example, and therefore we are not willing to take a certain risk, or that when we have fear of failure, right, in any sphere of our life. Why do we have fear of failure? Because our mind is actually telling us that I am not good enough for a certain thing. So just play safe, don't do something which is where there is a fear of failure. Judge others is when we are judging others, right? We are all the time judging others. That this person may be actually thinking this way, that person may be thinking that way about me, etc., etc. So we are always trying to judge others. And we are judging circumstances. This is the most common form of judgment, where our mind is actually telling us that right now is not the time to be happy. I will be happy when. I will be happy when I get another job. I will be happy when I get another degree. I will be happy when I get another MBA. I will be happy when I get married. I will be happy when I get another girlfriend. I will be happy when you know, I get a raise. I will be happy when whatever, right? So we keep on actually waiting for that elusive milestone to come. So this is actually also all you know, the judge in play. What is for each of these saboteurs, there is a lie which actually it is telling us. The mind is actually misleading us with a certain lie. So the judge is telling us that I am good for you. The judge basically is, has helped us with survival, right, in the formative years. So the judge is telling that I am good for you. It is also telling that if you are stressed, it is actually giving you a performance edge. It is helping you to outperform. So therefore you remain in stress, right? It may also tell you that negative emotions are helpful for you, right? A lot of people actually think that negative emotions like fear, stress, etc. are good for them because it drives them, they think, right? But it is actually very far away from the truth, because negative emotions are good as an alert signal. It is good actually to have a negative emotion because it is like keeping your hand on a gas stove, right? It actually gives you an alert. So you remove your hand and you don't get burnt further, right? But being in a negative emotion all the time is like keeping your hand on that gas stove and getting burnt. So the faster you are able to remove your hand from that gas stove, the better will be your state of mind, and the better will be your chances for success and happiness. And the faster you do that, and the more you do that, the more will be your happiness and success. The avoider is the other saboteur, right? A lot of times we tend to, some of you may actually relate to, some or the other of these saboteur thoughts. So the avoider thought pattern actually focuses on the pleasant and positive. We tend to, a lot of us tend to procrastinate, right? If something looks very difficult, we say that, okay, let's do kal karenge, parso karenge, you keep on actually postponing it, right? The procrastination is a very common form of the avoider tendency. So we tend to, when we have the avoider mindset, we tend to focus on the pleasant and positive, and we avoid difficult and unpleasant tasks. Avoider actually, people who have the avoider mindset, they also find it very difficult to say no. A lot of us actually feel that, it is very difficult for us to say no. So we keep on saying yes, and we keep on getting more and more on our head, some tasks or, more burden or whatever. In our relationships also, we cannot say no. And therefore we keep on getting emotionally manipulated and so on and so forth. This is actually a sign of avoider, when we avoid conflict. So it is not only avoiding of tasks, it is also avoiding of certain types of uncomfortable, relationship situation. And this is actually what is happening with the avoider tendency. The big lie which the avoider is saying is that you are a good person, you are better off if you avoid conflict, it is good to be flexible, and so on and so forth. The controller, right? This is a very, very common saboteur in today's context because of the type of uncertain world which we are in. We tend to sometimes control everything, right? We want to stay in control of our life, that nothing should be left to chance. So people who have this controller mindset going too far, they have an anxiety based need to stay in charge, and they will always show a lot of anxiety and impatience on their face, right? So these are basically the controllers in action. Their characteristics are that they connect with others through competition and challenge. They are straight talkers. They often push people outside the comfort zone and intimidate others. So people who are high controllers, you will find that they are very intimidating, and people generally run away from them. Their communication also sometimes comes across as them being angry. The controllers lie, the mind actually, the way it misleads them is that you are a good person. Sorry, this is actually a mistake here, but controller would generally be saying that I need to be in control. If I am not in control, then I basically, other people will mess up things. The hyperachiever, I already explained the hyperachiever, taking my own example. The hyperachiever is dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation. The hyperachiever is highly focused on external success. So we tend to actually equate our self-worth with what is our title, what kind of role we have, what kind of career moves we made, how much wealth we have, how many flats we have, all those kind of things. And we tend to think that if we don't have all those things, then we are not worthy. So at some point, we also lose touch with, therefore, our emotional and relationship needs. So that is the hyperachiever. The big lie which a hyperachiever mindset may have is that I am worthy as long as I am successful and achieving. Okay, and therefore a lot of overemphasis is there on achievement. The next one is hyper rational, where there are a lot of people who tend to look at life from the space of numbers, right? You must have seen that. For them, everything has to be black and white. Everything has to be, you should be able to measure it in numbers or some kind of data. But life is not all about numbers. There are a lot of emotions also in play, and you need to be both rational and emotional when you take the decisions. So people who are hyper rational, they tend to have this excess focus on the rational processing, and therefore they lose track of relationships, and they are sometimes come across as very cold, and therefore they are sometimes very difficult to making a relationship with them is very, very difficult. The big lie which their mind is actually telling them is that the rational mind is most important thing, and I need to actually use my rational mind. Emotions are very messy, so better not get into emotions. Then there is the hyper vigilant. The hyper vigilant is the type of our mindset where we have continuous intense anxiety, and we are constantly looking out for danger. I've seen a lot of these kind of people in my coaching clients, where people are constantly thinking that, okay, something bad is going to happen, something is going to go wrong. These kind of people actually are always very hyper vigilant, and they are always having a lot of anxiety. The big lie which their mind is actually telling them is that life is full of dangers, and that I am safe only when I look out for myself cautiously. The pleaser, I'm sure that you have seen people like this, those who are always trying to please other people. They are trying to indirectly gain affection. They are trying to gain acceptance of other people through helping, pleasing, rescuing, flattering people, and so on and so forth, to the extent that they lose sight of their own needs, right? So they have this very strong need to be liked by people, and they need frequent reassurance by others about their acceptance, affection, etc., etc. And the big lie which their mind tells them is that actually they are being good by being selfless, and by being good to others, they are actually being good. So I am not doing it for myself. The restless. A lot of people actually today, in today's world, are getting this, what is called as FOMO. I'm sure you guys have heard of this, fear of missing out. Right? We want to actually be everywhere, and the social media is also keeping us always on the mobiles and on the computers, trying to see what is happening in our life all around. So the restless actually part of our mind is constantly trying to find some excitement in the next activity or being busy. And the big lie which is actually telling us is that life is too short. Then there is the perfectionist, where perfectionism is very, very important for them. You have to be very, very every slide, every word of every slide has to be exactly in the same place. The color has to be exactly right, and so on and so forth, right? And this is actually organization taken too far. What it does to them is that they lose so much time on those small details that they lose sight of the big picture altogether, right? And the big lie which their mind tells them is that if I don't do this, people are going to mess up. So I have to be very, very perfect, only to ensure that the job gets done. And then the last is the victim. The victim is basically people who always think that something is going wrong with them, that life has been unfair with them. So they are basically very emotional and temperamental, and they also have sometimes this martyr streak. And the big lie which their mind is telling them is that I get love and attention which I deserve only if I am actually emotional or I'm depressed, etc., etc. So these people will always be depressed. They will always be having some problem or the other, right? So now these are the different types of saboteurs. There is a website actually called as positiveintelligence.com. If you're interested in knowing which are your top saboteurs, you can actually go to this website called as positiveintelligence.com. There is a test there. And from the test, you can get your positive intelligence score. And you can also find which are your top saboteurs. Okay. By knowing that, you will get some insights on how you can actually identify your saboteur and how you can actually build your positive intelligence. Now, going to the SAGE perspective, what is this SAGE? The SAGE is basically the part of our brain which is the mid-front. It is called as a MPFC in medical terms, the mid-prefrontal cortex, and parts of the right brain are also involved in the SAGE perspective, in these SAGE thoughts. The sage actually operates from the mindset that every outcome or circumstance, right? Every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift or an opportunity. So even if it is a negative situation which comes in your life, or some kind of negative challenge, the sage can actually show what is the gift or opportunity in that today or in the future, and how you can convert it into a gift or opportunity, right? Now, the sage is actually associated with such positive emotions as peace and calm, clear-headed, laser-focused action, creativity and innovation, compassion, gratitude, big picture thinking, and so on and so forth. Right. So you remember that we spoke about the fork in the road, right? Whenever there is a stimulus, we can take one of the two types of actions. Either it is a saboteur type of action, or the reaction, or the sage reaction. So this is where actually the sage comes in. If we take the sage, use more and more of the sage perspective, and that is when our positive intelligence grows. We use more and more of the sage perspective. It leads to more of positive emotions, and we take our actions from the space of higher emotions like wisdom, empathy, compassion, and curiosity. Right? What is the sage? The sage has got 5 powers. These powers are empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. Right? What are these 5 powers? Empathize is actually approaching a particular situation from a place of deep empathy. When we are in a situation where there is a problem with someone, or it is largely in a relationship context or in a team context, how can you approach a situation where you are empathetic to your own needs as well as empathetic to the other person's needs? So that is the empathize part of the sage. Explore is being curious. So when you have a problem, can you be curious enough to collect as much information as possible? Because in information there is knowledge, in knowledge there is the answers, right, to a difficult problem. Can you become curious enough to see all the information which is available? The problem is that when we are in the saboteur mode, we cannot actually have this sage perspective on. Therefore we are not curious enough, so we don't see the information which is available actually if we are in the sage mode. But if we are in the sage mode, we will be able to actually access all the information which is available, and we will be able to then take a better decision to a very difficult or challenging problem in our life. Innovate, as the name suggests, is about creativity. It is about putting on our creative hats and coming up with an innovative, out-of-the-box idea to a difficult situation in life. A lot of times there is an out-of-box situation solution which is available for our problems or our challenges, but we are not able to see that because, again, we are gripped or hijacked by our saboteurs. Navigate is the type of mindset where we look at our long-term goal, we look at our meaning, our purpose, and what is it that is really driving us, right? So what is that big picture? What is that big goal or purpose which drives us for the future? So for me, for example, I realized in the 25 years that I have actually been in the industry that for me, inspiring people to change their lives and live a more meaningful life is what is giving me inspiration. And that is why I said that, okay, I have a very cushy job, but this is not what is actually helping me in reaching that particular goal. And so I decided actually to give up on that job and start something new using the navigate powers. So when you are actually in the navigate powers, you will always be able to, access what is that big meaning or purpose which you have in your life. You will be able to move in that direction. And the last but not the least is activate. Have you seen these samurai warriors, right? I'm sure you have seen some martial arts films, and you may have seen the samurai warriors. When they are in the middle of a battle, they are laser focused in their action. They are not distracted by any thoughts or any fears or any kind of saboteurs. They are just laser focused on what they have to do in that particular moment. And that laser focused, clear-headed action sometimes is required in our life. A lot of times we are distracted because of fears, because of the fear of failure, because of what other people will say, because of this, that. But activate is basically saying that, okay, I'm not going to get distracted by anything. I just remove all the distractions from my mind and take laser focused, clear headed action. And that is what is activate. Right. So when we are actually able to control our saboteurs or do away with our saboteurs, we can then access this sage part of our mind, which is the higher center of our mind. And this helps us actually in using one of these 5 powers, and that actually has a transformative effect in life. So there are 3 ways of boosting our positive intelligence. All of you must be thinking how to actually use this in real life. There are 3 ways of doing that. One is we learn to intercept saboteur patterns. This is, by the way, what I do in my coaching practice. We help our clients to identify the saboteurs. We by identifying, you will also identify these when you do that positive intelligence test. You will get a report and you will be able to see which are your top 1 or 2 saboteurs. All of us have all the 10 saboteurs. All of us have almost all the 10 saboteurs, but there will be some which are dominant. So you basically have to focus on the top 2 or the top 3, depending on what actually you resonate with and what you think is coming in the way of your becoming more successful and happy in your life. So identifying your saboteur is the number 1 step. Then you have to be on a watch out for when the saboteur is going to hijack you, right? So the saboteurs are hijacking you with all these negative emotions. So there is a specific mindfulness training which you can do, and on the Positive Intelligence website, it also or on in the book, if you actually read, you will also come to know of some very simple exercises which you can do to be able to identify and to be able to be mindful when you get hijacked by these saboteur thoughts, because a lot of times we don't even know that something is wrong. We are just flowing through our emotions. And the next step is learning to label and dissolve the saboteurs. By labeling the saboteur thoughts, they lose their power on us. So if something in your head is telling you next time when you have a presentation that you are not good enough, don't do this, don't go on the stage because you're not good enough. You just identify that, oh, this is actually my judge saying that I'm not good enough. But actually, I will go to my sage and say that I am doing this to, for so and so purpose which I have, and I don't care about what people think. And by doing so, you are basically letting letting the sage guide you, and the saboteur, the judge which is sitting in your head, loses their power on you. The second way of boosting the positive intelligence is boosting the sage muscle, right? So there are ways in which you can use each of these 5 powers which I said. You can actually practice this using real life situations, and by imagining how, if you were to use one of these powers, which is empathize or explore or navigate or activate or innovate, how would you have reacted differently in that particular situation? So by just imagining that, you are actually building your mental muscle, and you will be able to react differently when the same situation or a similar situation occurs in the future. And the third and most important part of this, of building PQ, is boosting the self-command capacity. This is done by different mindfulness techniques. Mindfulness techniques which are used here are very, very simple. They are 10-second exercises that boost the self-command muscle. It is nothing but, for those of you who have done meditation or who have some exposure to meditation, it basically is about focusing on one sense at a time. So just closing your eyes and focusing on your breathing, for example, without having any thoughts in your mind. So you have to be conscious that there should be no thoughts in your mind. And if the thoughts are coming, you have to actually get rid of them and come back to your breathing. Because our minds are always having thoughts, and those thoughts are actually normal. So you just have to be conscious and say to your mind that, okay, I know that you are there, just pass away and bring your your attention back to your breathing. That is a very, very powerful exercise. And if you do this about 15 minutes per day, you will see that over time your mental muscle is getting built, and that is what will give you the power to move from the saboteur to the sage whenever any negative emotion hits. So how is actually PQ used in the real life, in our day-to-day life? PQ is often used together with coaching. I'm sure that you have heard of something about coaching, but coaching actually is used in different ways. The There is a formula called as the inner game formula, which was actually pioneered by this person called Timothy Galloway. He said that for an athlete or a sportsman, the opponent which is sitting in his or her mind is more dangerous or is more formidable than the opponent who is there on the other side of the net, right? He was talking about tennis players. A lot of times actually it is the opponent which is there in our mind who is coming in the way of our success and not the other opponent. And so he was talking about these interferences in the mind in those days. This is what he did actually long back in the 1970s. And he made this inner game equation, which is that a performance is equal to potential minus the interferences. So the interferences are nothing but our beliefs, our perceptions, and so on and so forth, which distort our response. It distorts our actions, and therefore distorts the results which we get in our life. So if we are able to do away with these interferences and all these negative thought patterns which are there in our mind, the saboteurs which I said, it has a significant impact in our performance improving. In terms of the work context, it can show up in different ways, as you might imagine, or you may have kind of guessed. Each of these different types of saboteurs shows up in different ways in our work context. If it is a controller, the person would be micromanaging, would be poor in delegation because he wants to control everything, and his team may be having very low self-esteem because he does not trust the team members. If it is a hyperachiever, that person will be always in overdrive. There will be high chances of burnout, and team also feeling overstretched, and so on and so forth. If it is an hyper rational person, then the person will be largely insensitive. There will be low emotional intelligence. Relationships will suffer with team members, and so on and so forth. If it is a hyper vigilant person, that person will be risk averse. He will be conservative. If the person is a pleaser, then he will be inauthentic. If the person is restless, he will not be able to focus. There will be poor prioritization. If the person is a stickler or a perfectionist, he will lose track on the big picture. He will focus so much on the small details that he will lose track on the big picture. If the person is a victim, he or she will have poor self-image and will focus more on the problems rather than the opportunities, right? So as you can see here, there are different types of leadership challenges which are also coming from the saboteur thought patterns. And therefore, it is very important that we identify these thought patterns and do away with them for us to gain access to our sage perspective and to transform our lives and to reach our true potential. So PQ is basically like one operating system. So these three types of steps which I told you: intercept the saboteurs, improve self-command, and mobilize the sage. It can help us in all types of problems in our life, whether it is in our personal life, in stress, wellness, parenting, relationships, career planning, etc., or in the professional context in building emotional intelligence, conflict management, creativity, time management, change management, and so on and so forth. And the research has now shown that the equation which I showed you earlier can be written in a slightly different way, that achievement is equal to potential multiplied by PQ. So potential is IQ, EQ, skills, knowledge, experience, your social network, etc., etc. But all of this is not of any use if you don't have positive intelligence, or it will not be effective enough if you don't have positive intelligence. So the more you develop positive intelligence, the more you will be able to leverage your potential, the more you will be able to leverage your IQ, your EQ, your skills, knowledge, experience, and social network. And the better will be your achievement, both in work as well as in life, because this is a key to not only higher performance, but also a key to better success and happiness. Okay, so this is about me. Please reach out to me. I think a lot of you have already reached out to me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of coaching in large organizations, and that is what actually gives me a lot of drive, pleasure, and that is my gives me a lot of meaning and purpose. If I think we have already we are 12 minutes over time, so since we started 2 minutes late, so we are 10 minutes over time. Maybe we can spend another, if the team is okay, then we can spend 10 minutes for question and answers if anybody has any.
Absolutely, sir. So Tanya will take over from here.
Guys, please start raising your hands.
So while people are thinking about questions, Sarvesh, do we have time for that fourth question? I'm very interested in knowing what the team actually or the friends here have to say about that.
Okay, I'll quickly share the poll. Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah, no issue with the timing.
So the poll is about how relevant do you feel after you know a little bit of basics of positive intelligence. Of course, you can get in touch with me for more details, or you can read this book on positive intelligence. There is a lot of stuff on the internet as well. I want to know, how much do you think growing your skill in positive intelligence can help you bring sustainable change or transformation in your life or work, or life and work?
Ten more seconds. Okay, shall I share the results now?
Yeah, please.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, so about 47% plus 27%, which is 74% of you think that it will help you to a large extent, or it can be transformative in your life. Believe me, I have actually had a transformative experience using positive intelligence in my life. And I strongly urge you to actually delve more into this and use it more in your life. For those of you who said it can only help you to a small extent, etc., I would urge you to actually read more on this particular topic. With that, I think we can take more questions.
Yes, I think Vikram has already asked a question over chat. Vikram, if you can please share your question.
Hi Raji. So basically, when we were talking about the avoider personality, right? So there was a point which stated that it is difficulty in saying no, as well as avoider of tasks. So actually, both these points are contrasting in nature.
Yeah.
So how come both get classified in the avoider category?
Yeah. So avoidance is of. So in this particular case, the person is avoiding something which is unpleasant, Vikram. So therefore the avoidance. Now the unpleasant could be something which is a difficult task, and therefore the mind actually is telling him or her that this is a difficult task, you may fail, and therefore it is better to avoid it or procrastinate, right? Therefore it is he or she is avoiding the task. In the case of saying no, this is about relationships. In the relationship context, he or she is also trying to avoid something which is unpleasant, or the person perceives it to be something which could be unpleasant, and therefore is not able to say no. So he or she will continue to say yes and please the person, or go along with the person, even though in the heart get the most of their relationships. So one is in the relationship context, the other is in the work or task orientation context. But in both cases, the person is trying to avoid something which is seemingly unpleasant.
Yes, sir. Got it. So since you said that you also have an extensive experience in psychology background, I would also love to know your take on the trolley problem as well.
On what?
The trolley problem.
Sorry, I have not heard of that.
Okay.
Can't comment because. So
Sure.
I am not an expert in psychology. I don't have a psychology background. My background is in pharmaceutical sciences and in coaching. That is where my expertise is. I use some concepts of psychology and neuroscience, which I'm trained on in these areas.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any more questions?
Hello. Hello, sir. Praveen here.
Yes, Praveen. Hi.
Sir, you talked about stimulus and response, and there is a time gap in between them.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you want to increase our positive intelligence,
Yeah.
can we do it by increasing that time gap?
So typically in a context, you think about it in real life, Praveen, when say for example, your professor is asking you something and you have to immediately answer, right? Or in the work related context, your boss is asking you something and you have to immediately, answer. Or you are making a presentation in a meeting where there are people sitting and you have to respond to a certain question, or you have to respond to a certain situation, right? In many of these cases, you may not have the luxury to increase the time. You cannot say, your boss tells you, asks you a question. Sometimes you may not have sometimes maybe you have the luxury to say that, okay, I will think about it and come back to you tomorrow. But sometimes maybe you don't have that luxury, right? So you have to be therefore be able to respond without much time gap. But having said that, it does not mean that you need to immediately respond, right? So the positive intelligence is the capacity to be able to take that small pause, which could be a few seconds, and be able to use some of these exercises. So we are in the positive intelligence theory. When we go, I did not go into the deeper theory because we did not have time today. So some of these mindfulness techniques which I was talking about, right? So just taking a few deep breaths, for example, and without any thoughts in your mind, can be a way in which you can move from that saboteur perspective to the sage perspective, right? Just for example, it is actually there are 4 senses. If you want to know a little bit more, there are 4 senses, which is breathing, which is listening. So you can just shut your eyes and listen to something, which is the farthest sound that you can hear, for example. Just try to remove all the thoughts which are there in your mind and just try to listen something which is the farthest thought in your farthest sound which you can hear. Or it could be the touch. So one mindfulness technique which you will read if you go to the book is rubbing your fingers against each other and just focusing on the sensation at the fingertips. Rubbing the fingertips of one hand with the fingertips of another hand and just focusing on the sensation of which is coming at the fingertips without actually, again, any thoughts in your mind. So if you see that your mind is wandering, which it will, especially in the beginning when you start doing this, you have to consciously say to your mind that, okay, try to let the thoughts pass like clouds in the sky and come back to that particular sensation, right? Do this, and when you do it actually repeatedly and you make it a part of your daily practice, slowly your mental muscles will get built. It is just like going to the gym. It will not happen, in one day. Just like in a gym, you cannot say that, if you have never gone to a gym, you cannot go tomorrow and lift a 25 kg dumbbell, right? So it requires some building of the muscles. So maybe initially this will lead you to be able to deal with small problems better. But as you build your mental muscles with this training over a period of time, you will see that even big problems and challenges in life, you will be able to move to the sage perspective and see some kind of gift or opportunity in a seemingly negative situation. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Hi, sir. Utkarsh, am I audible?
Yeah.
So first of all, thanks a lot for the session, sir. I'm, just really insightful. And I really wish if we could have the session before, much months before, so that really better trained right now, because right now we're in very exhaustive and, quite demanding kind of a rigorous program. My question to you is, sir, like how can we basically switch from the saboteur to sage mindset and focus on very limited time? Because, we are actually very much engaged right now. And specifically when, we have any external triggers like intentional, unintentional, relationship or personal. And because they keep on creating a loop, reaction that mind is not able to come out of it, even if you try a lot. So just this is one question, multiple questions though, but I'll just take this one at the moment.
Yeah. So what you said is absolutely true. Sukumaran, right?
Sir, Utkarsh.
Utkarsh.
Yes, sir.
Where are you? You disappeared actually. Here you are. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Utkarsh, what you said is absolutely true. In fact, there is something called as a negative energy or a positive energy spiral or vortex, right? So what happens is that when you are triggered by different saboteurs, depending on what saboteur is, your principal saboteur, and you don't actually consciously try to get out of it. It is like a vortex, it is like a negative energy spiral. It will kind of drain your energy and pull you down, and more saboteur thoughts will come in, and it will become bigger and bigger. The problem will seem to be bigger and bigger. The same way, if you move to the sage perspective, there is something called as a positive energy spiral, where you will see that more and more positive thoughts open up for you as you go into the positive energy spiral. Okay. So the answer to your question is, the answer was how you can actually do that. And it is by being mindful and by doing these mindfulness exercises, what I actually mentioned. That is the sure shot way of doing that. So the 3-step process which I actually talked about, first is being aware of what are your saboteurs. Second is understanding what are those sage reactions which you can actually use in that particular perspective. So you need some practice for that, and that requires some bit of work with a coach to be able to practice each of those saboteur patterns in different situations. So you can, in a particular situation, you may want to use empathize. In another particular situation, you may want to use the explore power and become curious and try to find more information. In another different type of situation, you may want to use more of the navigate power. Some other situation, you may want to innovate and become creative, and so on and so forth. So second step is actually learning how to use the sage. And the third is building your mental muscle, which is using those mindfulness techniques. Now, these mindfulness techniques don't take much time. As I said, even 15 minutes a day, if you do it 5 minutes, space it out by 5 minutes, and or you can actually do it 2 minutes at a time also is also fine. You just need to learn these techniques and do it 2 minutes at a time at different points in time. 15 minutes in a day, I'm sure that everybody can take out if they really want to. There is, by the way, a program which is run by Shirzad himself. Shirzad Shamin was the person with whom I have got trained on positive intelligence. He's this person from Stanford. He teaches in Stanford University. He's also CEO of the Coach Training Institute, which is the largest institute training coaches in the world. And he's a pioneer of positive intelligence. He has a program. I think it costs $1,000. I mean, program for non-coaches. There is for any person who wants to learn more about positive intelligence. There is a program which he runs, which costs about $1,000. It is available on the Positive Intelligence website. You will see it there.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll have multiple questions. I'll connect with you on LinkedIn for that.
Sure.
I just wanted to know from you for situations like exams and all that, or some sort of, you can say, urgent interviews. Thank you very much.
Sure.
That really helps.
Sure. Take care.
Very good evening, sir.
Yes, Raj.
Hello.
Yes, Raj. Go ahead.
Thank you for joining us, sir. So one of the saboteurs you talked about was the hyperachiever, sir. And I wanted to understand, like, going through these, like, suppose if I go through the mindfulness technique and the solution that you have given, if taking the case of hyperachiever, won't it become complacent? And given the situation that we are in right now, where we need to outperform and do the best that we can, and it will be definitely going forward for the next the jobs as well. Won't that make us complacent and not, difficult and off the track from the game that we are in right now?
Yeah. Good question. Very good question, Raj. In fact, a lot of people ask this question when I talk about positive intelligence. And at some point, actually, this question is coming also from the judge in your mind. The judge in your mind actually is saying that, okay, you have to stay a hyperachiever to be able to be seen as worthy. And therefore, don't become, I am actually helpful to you. And if I am not there, which means that if you are not a hyperachiever, then you will lose, people will not actually like you, or people will not see you as worthy, and therefore I'm good for you. Right now, I'm not saying that identifying this hyperachiever saboteur does not mean that you have to become complicit, right? So the SAGE, as we spoke about, is about empathy and different other SAGE perspective, right? We talked about the 5 SAGE perspectives. Now, what happens with a hyperachiever is that they often do not empathize with themselves. So what happens with a hyperachiever, and I have experienced that with myself in earlier part of my career, is that I was always beating myself up. Nothing was good enough for me. I was always beating myself up, thinking that, okay, I have to do even better, even better, even better, even better. There is no end to that, right? There is no end to how much better you can get. So the first thing which actually the SAGE perspective tells you is to empathize with yourself. And it tells you that your worth is not related to what you actually achieve. You are worthy as you are, right? And then it tells you that how you can actually achieve. So you can also achieve good results using different other SAGE techniques, and without actually being unempathetic to yourself and beating yourself up, and that all the things which actually come with that, right? Stress, hypertension, relationship issues, poor work-life balance, all of these things will come if you don't actually recognize that. So the idea is to actually understand that my hyperachiever is telling me that I am not worthy unless I achieve, and then saying moving to the SAGE perspective and saying that I am empathize with myself and with others, which is explore, be always curious to know what I to get more information, and so on and so forth. Navigate is something which is very, very important for hyperachievers. A lot of times hyperachievers lose focus on what they are, those people who have the hyperachiever mindset or saboteur, they lose focus on why they're doing what they're doing. Because there is this mad rush to achieve, they at some point lose track of why they're doing it. Right? So there is this, I don't know whether this concept of golden circle, which you have heard. Simon Sinek actually talks about it. There's this chap called Simon Sinek, who's a very inspirational speaker. He talks about the golden circle, which is 3 concentric circles, one inside another. And the outermost circle is about what we do. The next circle is how we do. And the centermost circle is why we do it. Right? So a lot of times we are doing something just because it is somebody else has told us, or because we never thought about what are the other options, and we are not actually deriving pleasure in it. Right? Now think about the situation where you try to understand that, okay, this actually does not give me pleasure, and I'm doing it just because for the sake of my hyperachiever saboteur telling me that, okay, this is what I need to do. And you move instead to the SAGE perspective and use the navigate power to understand what is it that is really giving me meaning and purpose. And if you start actually working in that direction, then work will become play. You will not become complacent. You will still work very hard, but work will feel like it is play. You will not feel stressed. You will not have the hypertension. You will not have all those negative emotions, anxiety related to failure and all those things. Do you see the difference between the two?
Yes, sir. I understand.
Now,
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Raj. Very good question.
So with the interest of time, can we wrap up the sessions?
Sure. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you very much, Sarvesh, for all the coordination and for being in touch. Tanya, I think initially my first contact with XLRI was through Tanya. So thank you very much, both of you. This is a topic which is very, very close to my heart, and something which has transformed my life. I hope that after today's session, I have kind of planted some seeds of thought in some of your minds, and that you will actually be more curious to learn more about positive intelligence and to transform your own lives as well.
Sure, sir. I'll take a moment for the vote of thanks.
Please.
On behalf of the Executive PGDM batch of 21-22, I'm extending my very hearty vote of thanks to you, sir, Mr. Rajiv Nayak, for sharing your valuable insights on positive intelligence, new age human skill. I'm sure the lessons learned today will continue to be our guiding light throughout our lives and career and help us become better leaders for tomorrow. Thank you so much for this wonderful session.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All the best to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
All the best.
Thank
you,
you.
Rajesh.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jagan, thank you very much. You too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.